Jessica's path. A man that doesn't spend time with his family can never be a real man. Don Corleone. The red convertible, with Florida plates and Creed blasting from the radio, tears down the drive to the emergency department entrance. They were staying with a cousin who had young children and strong opinions. The breakfast conversation turned to family responsibility and became animated. When Tracy tried to intervene, she ended up on the floor with a scary feeling in her belly and pain in her back. She stood up, broke Mario's nose, climbed into the car, and dared him not to drive her to the hospital. Typically, Mario doesn't allow food, drink, or uninspected shoes inside his car and tries to ignore the syrupy green-brown ooze flowing from Tracy. He knows a guy with a shop that can clean anything, no questions asked, and Mario's fingers twitch, ready to set the GPS. He grips the wheel with one sweaty hand and adjusts the bloody tissue in his nose with his other hand. His sunglasses don't correct nearsightedness, and Mario squints at the road with a clenched jaw and blurry eyes. The headache is getting worse and drainage from his nose coats his throat. It doesn't help that Tracy is making all those noises either. He's going as fast as he can. With trembling hands, he rubs his chest against a sharp, stabbing pain and chews his lip with worry. It's not a heart attack. The anxiety, sharp pains, and trembling hands make a panic attack more likely. But the new daddy isn't worrying about Tracy or the baby. He's thinking about a tiny brown-haired ED nurse. Mario used to tease his little cousin, never suspecting she would grow up to become the family's West Coast Madrina. He touches his damp nose tissue again and winces. Not ready to be a father, Mario called Griselda 6 weeks ago when they crossed the bridge above Greystone. Rather than sympathize, Grizzly tore him a new one and left him on hold while she set up an OB/GYN consult. With Mario twisting on the line, Griselda called the family's East Coast Madrina to congratulate her on her first grandchild. Finally, she brought Mario into the conference call, gave him the appointment information, and ducked out of the conversation. And now, racing down to the ED, Mario reflects on how his cousin had grown into her nickname. What a horrible little monster. Here he is, having a heart attack, and can't even check into the quacking ED because it's Grizzly's den. Again, it's not a heart attack. When his tire hits the curb, Mario reaches past Tracy to open the door and thumb types a navigation app as he tips her out. Once she's on her feet and clear, Mario stomps the gas and shoots up the hill. The hospital will take care of her, and his chest pains are already easing up. Cousin Leo's shop pops up on the screen and Mario hauls a right at the light. She watches the car race off through tears, but not from disappointment. Those tears dried up years ago. Alone for the first time, Tracy shuffles across the sidewalk to the entrance, ignoring the obnoxious drone buzzing overhead. The smell of roasting flesh from the fire pit doesn't help her nausea. Mid-retch, she glances toward the fire pit, where a silver-haired police officer waves a brush like he's painting her story in the air, and she imagines the caption, "Midwest country girl model ends up arm candy for kid gangster." From athletic, fashionable, and confident to scared, messy, and weak, with awful hair and a dirty t-shirt stretched over a huge belly. Tracy shivers as she staggers through security, where an oversized security guard sits hungry at his post by the metal detector. Helmet stops pulling the stone along the blade's edge when the fried chicken smell of the other guard's lunch slaps him into heightened consciousness. As he readies to rise and storm the booth, the whoosh-whoosh of rotor blades announces Koner's pizza delivery. So, chicken, pizza, or the combo? Just then, Tracy lurches through the door. When Helmet jumps to his feet, a lapful of metal clangs to the floor. He stoops, scoops, and throws blades into scabbards hanging on the wall. When Tracy stops and slumps, Helmet wraps an arm around her and hauls her into the waiting room, where Sweet But Psycho by Ava Max blasts softly from somewhere. Sitting at nurse first, nodding to the tune, Emma fields comments and complaints, makes so sorry sounds, and boils inside. Ah, wah, sprained ankles and wait times. Visions of explosions and slaughter fade when Helmet bursts in with Tracy. Emma leaps to her feet, shrieking, "Holen Sie sich die Krankenschwester und bringen Sie dieses Mädchen zu Trauma, stat!" ED Tech Benson doesn't speak German but gets the gist. He grabs a wheelchair, scoops up Tracy, and plows for Rhesus, barking at the world to get out the way, stepping wide over the cloddy green trailing behind them. Halfway to Rhesus, Bjorn from Patient Revenue Management pops up to put an ID bracelet on the patient and start the chart. Who is this, and what information is already in the system? Allergies, contacts, insurance, Medicaid, Medicare? Of course, the ED can't turn anyone away, and the university eats it if uninsured patients don't qualify for assistance. However, there are different levels of care and criteria when deciding between laser surgery or amputation. Tracy doesn't have her purse or wallet, but gives Bjorn her information. When he enters her social security number, a monitor in the tower lights up. Bjorn's screen flashes a yellow flag calling for an alias, suggesting Jessica B42. He prints a new bracelet and passes it to Rhesus Tech Fanny with a business-friendly nod before heading back to his cubicle. Fanny watches until Bjorn disappears and sighs, imagining how her life would have turned out if she'd studied harder and partied less. By now, she could have been an EDRN, a travel nurse, or maybe even a rescue nurse in a helicopter. But no, maybe it was poor planning or unforeseen circumstances, but Fanny's life had killed the dreams she dreamed. Even as her brave face projects sunshine, dark clouds roil inside. When Fanny calls the code, Sabrina grunts and pushes away from her desk in the CTL office. Back in Rhesus 2, Benson collects the patient's things while Fanny helps her change into a gown. He empties pockets, drops blood-stained clothes into biohazard, and stuffs everything else into a patient belongings bag. Then he frowns, crosses out Tracy, and writes Jessica on the bag. Fanny attaches EKG stickers and puts Jessica on the monitor, while Benson wraps an O2 sensor around a finger, after which he does a heel spin and marches back to the waiting room like a good soldier as Fanny hurriedly replaces the ID bracelet. Overhead lights flicker and dim when Sabrina glides into Rhesus to confirm the code. Eventually, ICE and the Canadian Mounties catch up with Sabrina and ship her back to Manitoba. After she's gone, TCL buys the ED a cake for the going-away party. The doctors come marching in. Among the first-year residents is Francois, who wishes he'd used the bathroom 5 minutes earlier when his bladder started calling. He tries not to think about the soiled utility room behind Rhesus, with the massive sink that flushes like a giant urinal. Sabrina pages the on-call OB team and checks that Jessica is on the monitor as Blair finishes the first of 2 18 GVs. The nurse is all impatience, pursing lips and rolling eyes until the patient sobs and grabs her hand. Blair squeezes back, giving Jessica a look that says she's brave and everything will be okay. Then Blair blinks, crusts over again, and goes back to fishing for a vein. Fanny runs to Peds for the infant warmer. When the silver elevator clunks and groan creaks open, the OB team spills out. 2 doctors, 2 nurses, and Porthos, the respiratory therapist, pushing his complicated blue cart with the plexiglass hood and all those lines and wires. With OB and respiratory on deck, the ED doctors and nurses are demoted to support staff, while ED techs bump up to superhero sidekick status because they know where to find the specialized equipment and instrument trays. Fanny and the other techs switch teams without a twinge of conscience. But just as the birthers are setting up, Jessica shrieks and Mini Mario's head pops out. Francois has been hovering close by, waiting for this moment. With the grand opening and Mario Jr.'s debut, Francois plants himself, ignoring his bursting bladder and the furious OB nurses. The ED attending smiles behind his mask and tells Jessica to push. As the tiny blue baby slides into Francois's hands, nobody notices the expanding dark area on his scrub pants, even when Fanny throws a towel on the floor at his feet. Blair wipes off the amniotic membrane and suctions the baby's mouth with a blue rubber bulb. Then she dries the itty-bitty tater tot with warm blankets, rubbing quickly to stimulate circulation and remove the wet goo. But he's still blue, indicating respiratory distress syndrome. The respiratory system is the last vital organ to fully develop in utero. If the baby is too early, there will be a lack of surfactant, which keeps the tiny air bubbles in the lungs open. In Jessica's case, the OB team wasn't sure how many weeks they were dealing with, and every week counts. At 24 weeks, less than 1/3 of preemies will make it, while at 25 weeks, 2/3 survive. Size can be an indicator when gestation dates are uncertain, and it's rare for a baby weighing less than 500 grams to live. Blair figures baby Mario is about the size of a fat gray squirrel, so the little guy has a fighting chance. But to achieve anything, he needs to breathe. Those who aren't hands-on step back to make room for respiratory to save the day. Porthos quickly intubates, placing an endotracheal tube. When Mario's color changes to orangish green, tears flow down Blair's cheeks, and she sings, "We got color change!" A collective cry of relief mellows the room. Blair hugs Jessica and rubs her back as the peds attending wraps the baby like a burrito in a blanket and places him on the cart. Obi cuts the umbilical cord, Blair gives the shot, and Jessica drifts in and out of consciousness. It will be some hours before she can see her baby, but his chances aren't awful. With Jessica's stretcher close behind, Porthos pushes through a mixed herd of young doctors and nurses. ED nursing and EVS give the thumbs up as they pass. The doors to the silver elevator close, and the nursing staff sets up for the next trauma. Griselda is at the elevator 20 minutes later, passing her badge over the reader and pushing the button while holding her phone to her ear. She arranges an extended fishing trip for Mario and gets the red car's title transferred to Tracy. It has that new car smell after being detailed at Cousin Leo's shop. The elevator goes ping and the doors open. Griselda pushes the 5th floor button and stares out expressionlessly as the doors close. My name is Douglas Revoicer. We hope you enjoyed Jessica's Path from Chris P. Jackson's New Saelland Stories Baseline.